Hello, this is Daniel Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide, and on the 7th of December, CIG released the Q&A on the RSI Galaxy, a document that answered more questions than you might think that it did. Is it a ship that I owned? Sort of. I bought one, but only to serve as a prize in our next Grow the Channel ship giveaway. But I will, however, be enjoying the loaner in the meantime. So, first question. It seems that if all you have is the base model, the modular area is a big empty space, and they agree that it would be possible to have stuff in there as loose cargo. However, the main things that you'll get with the cargo module is a lift in the floor and those two big lift cranes. So, sure, you can put stuff in the space, but without those, and with there being no ramp in the back, actually getting stuff into and out of that space is going to be a huge nuisance. But it does indirectly answer another question. It means that this lift here has to go all the way to the ground. Why so? Because if the Galaxy is being flown without a module, there is no rear ramp, then this is the only way in or out for players on foot to enter or leave the ship. The second half of the answer goes back to an old statement, mostly forgotten, that we would eventually have to pay for storage space of our ships as some sort of money sink to keep fleets from becoming impossibly large. This has to do with that, but it's interesting that the idea of paying for ship storage hasn't been dropped as we might have thought. The next question has to do with how the modules get swapped out, and it will basically be that the ship has to be stored and then there will be some sort of kiosk at the shipyard and some sort of timer involved. But when you combine this with the prior answer, you get the question of what happens if your Galaxy is at, say, Orison, but the module is at Lorville. How does the player, or really anybody, move something that large? I can only presume that there will be some sort of claim-like procedure that moves the module behind the scenes with some sort of hand-wavium. The next question about whether the modules could be dropped off onto the surface of the planet was a firm no, and not surprising. Not only was there the power problem, but also how would the ship mysteriously replace the missing floor, land rights, and the fact that most of the modules work with a lift that is in the floor. The answer to the question about medical facilities was equally obvious, since there was no mention of any other medical facilities either in the text or art. No, not every ship of this size has a medical bay. For example, none on the Starfarer or Hercules, etc. The answer to the question about large shields stated that they are rebalancing shields, which I guess makes sense. But after the rebalance, the Galaxy only needs one size large shield. Will the smaller Hercules also be downgraded to one large shield because it also is all that it needs? It seems odd that they would go through all this extra work, since the Galaxy clearly does not seem size-constrained for having an extra large shield, rather than have to configure dozens of other ships. The next two questions seem to be duplicate until you reference the original question thread, and the first question was based on an exterior image, and the second question was based on the floor plans. On the second question is a little confusing of what they're referencing by the rearward room on the first floor. If they mean this room, then there is obviously a hallway missing between it and the lifts. If they mean this space, then that explains the missing hallway, but raises another. The suiting up area is on the lower floor, but the actual airlock is on the upper floor. Either way, adding a doorway here just makes the whole ship more efficient. I mean, imagine if you are here and a component has an emergency there. Also, perhaps worth considering would be relocating the airlock and docking collar from here to here and having it actually connect with that room like in the answer. The next question answers the speculation that the chin turret on the Galaxy might be able to be controlled by the pilot. Since it doesn't, then there needs to be 3 turret gunners for a full crew, which clarifies that one of these 2 seats behind the captain is the chin turret gunner, while the other is likely the engineer, and that these 2 seats on either side of the gallery over the flight deck are the side turret positions. The question regarding the refinery is significant in that it says that each of the 2 refineries are much larger than the Expanse. This makes me think that possibly the Galaxy will have a refinery capacity comparable or even more than the Orion. That means that given enough prospectors or moles supplying it, that the Galaxy will soon be overfilling the 64 SCU of cargo grid space on the sides of the hangar. So I'm guessing that in practice what they're going to be doing is loose stacking the cargo in the flight deck and then bringing up something more along the lines of a Freelancer max size craft and then transloading the cargo out the back into it. The question on quantum fueling clarifies that CIG is not positioning the Galaxy as some sort of leave-everything-behind vehicle like the Odyssey, but a ship that is meant to be part of a fleet, doing operations in an area, including starfarers, cargo ships, etc. As for the next question, I think dreams of fitting Tonks in this vehicle are going to be unfulfilled. It's not that the cargo bay is too small, but the design is to lift them up with the crane and then move them to the side. So unlike many cargo lift-equipped ships like the Constellation, the lift is not the same size as the whole cargo floor, but only about a third in the middle. This means that the limitations will not be the size of the cargo bay, but the size of the lift portion. It does mean, though, that for vehicles that will fit through the hole, like the Ursa, you will likely be able to fit a number of them. My original thoughts about fitting a number of Merlins or Razors still seems viable. As to the next question, anybody who really thought that the answer was going to be as comparable to the Connie was dreaming, or had no concept of physics. We have handheld repair tools, once again as a hint, and what I've been calling the refueling trolley. It will be interesting to see it and work with it in the game, if it ever gets there. Next is the question about the rear hangar, which I have been regarding as one of the nicest features of the ship. The answer about it not having a ramp was quite disappointing, as it reduces a lot of the utility of the ship for being able to support ground operations. And even more frustrating was that their explanation for doing so simply reflected stubbornness or lack of imagination. For example, shortening the front nose, which they already said contains nothing of importance, would get the extra length needed. And apart from that, there is another solution that can be summarized in just 2 words: tilting floor. CIG, please give that some consideration when this goes into white box and gray box phases. Then, when it gets to the subject of hangar sizes, the defining case of the extra small hangar on a ship has been the Carrack. And even though the footprint of the 2 hangars may be the same, the Galaxy has a distinct difference. The hangar on the Galaxy is 2 stories tall, while the Carrack hangar is only 1 story tall. As you may know, there are a lot of ships that can fit in the footprint of the Carrack hangar, but you can't close the roof. In particular, I'm thinking about one of my favorite ships, the Anvil Arrow. If the Arrow with wings folded and gear down can fit under the door of the Galaxy, then you will likely not be simply able to fit 1 in the hangar, but 2, by facing them towards each other and slightly twisted and offset. If that proves to be the case, then the utility of both the Galaxy and the Arrow are enhanced. Which brings me at the end to the big picture subject of modularity. And not simply whether we will ever see it, but whether it is useful anymore, and even more so the extremely coarse-grained modularity represented by the Galaxy. It is either a quite complete hospital or has no medical at all. It either has an extremely high-capacity refinery or none at all. It either has more cargo capacity than a Caterpillar or less than the Freelancer. You can't have half the hospital and half the refinery, or half the refinery and half the cargo space for the results. And they could have designed it that way. All the modules are symmetrical, with the left and the right side mirrors of each other. But they decided not to. Honestly, the first hints we had of ship modularity was coarse-grained. The Avengers were originally described as the basic Avenger plus prisoner module, the EMP module, etc. But what we got was 3 separate ships, and pretty much nobody minded. Which makes me kind of bemused at the folks that are whining about how charging for the modules is some sort of cash grab. They could have just sold 3 ships like the Spirit series or the Cutlasses, and nobody would have really complained at all. And many would have probably bought all 3 ships as a package and spent way more. But if you're looking at it as a flexibility feature, coarse-grained modularity only has maximum utility when thinking at the organization fleet level, as in how many hospital ships we have right now, and how many refinery ships we have right now, and how many large cargo ships we have right now. But here's the thing. As our fleets grow with ships purchased with UEC, does it really matter that much if we have a Galaxy hospital module in storage or an Apollo? That's why, speaking personally, I'm not all that interested if they ever implement modularity on the Retaliator bomber. When we didn't have a lot of options for executive transport or armed medium cargo or drop ships, the idea of using a converted bomber made some sense. Now that there are better choices like the 400 and the Constellation Taurus and the Valkyrie, so I just let the bomber be a bomber. Now when it comes to what I call medium-grain modularity, such as on the Caterpillar or the Carrack, it gets more attractive to the individual captain as a way to shade their capabilities mission by mission and theater by theater. And that is why I wish they had sold the ability to install the port or starboard size of a Galaxy module and made it more of a medium granularity modularity system. Because to the individual captain, medium grain modularity is much more attractive in the options it allows. Now, you might be thinking I've talked about coarse grain modularity and medium grain modularity, but what about fine grain modularity? Well, actually, we already have that. It's called components. So what is my revised opinion on the Galaxy following this Q&A? It's a good ship, particularly for large org fleets, and has the potential to be a much better ship with a couple of small changes, capable of being accomplished during the white box and gray box phases. 1. Connect the lower levels here. 2. Move the airlock and docking ring to here. 3. Be able to mix and match the port or starboard half of the modules independently to achieve a medium grain granularity. And 4. Use a tilting deck mechanism as a substitute to a ramp to allow ground vehicles access to the hangar. Hey, you know how Morphologist has all those videos titled and Architect Reviews? Maybe I should call mine an Architect Fixes. Just joking. Now for an update on our ship giveaways. 3.18 is getting closer to launch, and with it the end of our piloting contest for the most impressive landing of a ship, Hercules size or larger. See the video in the description, and then there is the annual Grow the Channel ship giveaway for the winner's choice of the Galaxy, the multi-role modular mining moving medical machine, or the Banu Big Box Bargain Bazaar, the Merchantman. 1 entry per video, members are entered automatically, and everyone else just be a subscriber and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is, if they did offer separate left and right modular installation, which combo would be the most interesting to you? Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.